very much for that wonderful introduction. I think I was just saying to our previous speaker that when we think about language, we think about food, we think about dance and music, we actually need to put all of them together because they really are related from a cultural perspective. So I was given the task to talk to you guys about food very unfairly while you guys are eating, but I'm pleased to report that I went through the line first and I was really, really pleased to see the selection. Lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of color. Those are all good things that are a very important part of our cultural heritage that I think that some of us lose once we come into the U.S. system. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So first, just a little general, professors like to go through little organized ways of saying things. So just talk a little bit about the ABCs of what we consider to be good health, and then a little bit about what nutrition recommendations, not a lot to bore you or make you feel like I'm trying to put you up to sleep or give you a lecture. And then the most important thing I think for this group is understanding the importance of how acculturation, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I come to that part, impacts our food and eating. And then the big thing again here, and I'm pleased to see that there are so many children, is talking a little bit about fast foods, which is I think the biggest impact on our diet, and what are some of the problems that we anticipate. So I think when we think about the ABC, the first thing that is very important, even though we think about nutrition as being primarily food, but food is what we take in, but we also need to utilize what we take in out, and so that's why activity is such an important part when we think about food and eating. So if you don't have to go to a gym, everybody thinks they have to join whatever the gym is, fancy gym, expensive. What happened to good old-fashioned walking? At home we never drove everywhere, we never tried to park as close as possible to the building that we needed to go to, and those are important traditions that I think we lose. The other thing is dancing. That's a very good way of getting physical activity, and so we really should be doing more of it, and so it's very good that part of our activity tonight is also going to be a little bit of dancing. The other thing that I think is big, I looked around the room a little bit and I see all of us with our little smartphones that are sometimes smarter than us. It's not only smartphones, it's computer screens, it's any kind of screen, television screen. I always fuss at my husband because we have about 3 or 4 televisions in the house, and as he goes through every room, each television gets turned on, and each one has a different channel, and it drives me crazy, but that's the American way. And he was traveling for about a week, and I think the televisions had a little bit of a scare because they didn't go on except for news time. So screen time is another important thing that takes away from the physical activity that I think that we never had, all of us, when we were growing up. We listened to the radio, listened to the news, and then we went out and played when we came from school, but that doesn't happen enough anymore. This is a little bit more technical, but the important thing over here is that you need to have a good food base, you need to have a variety of different foods, and then you need to couple that together with physical activity. And here in the U.S., the guideline has been adapted in many different countries, including several countries in Africa as well, where we talk about some way that we provide guidelines, and we use what we call the My Pyramid here, but that doesn't mean, and we've changed that since to something that's a little bit easier to understand, but it's important I put it up here so that we could see the relationship between the types of foods we eat as well as physical activity. And again, lots of information over here. And the bottom line is that you want to make good, healthy, positive choices, okay? And the bottom part of that is that we also want to make sure that our food is safe. A lot of times we don't take into consideration storage and all of those things. So when we think about nutrition and food, it's not just the choices, eating more fruits and vegetables, eating a healthy diet, but also making sure that we store it correctly and that our food is also safe to eat. This is especially a problem sometimes in young children and pregnant women who eat certain foods that might increase the likelihood of them, and some of the folk over here can't see a little bit this podium here, because of the fact that some of these things can be more problematic from a health perspective. Like I said, I'm not asking you to memorize all of that. That's just like sitting in a classroom, but I wanted to at least put some things that are of concern, and we'll go through some of those more specific things as I talk some more. Okay, so I think fundamentally when you look at everything, we need to think about what is the amount of what we eat, and then we also need to think about the fact that there's certain things that might determine what we might or might not need to eat. As we grow older, many of us, sometimes when we are younger, some of us develop certain diseases, certain problems, and so we need to adjust our eating way. And so that's important for us to be very, very much cognizant. We need to know what is the problem, what is the relation to food and eating, and what kind of adjustments we need to make. Now, I'm not trying to do a dietary counseling lecture, but if nothing else, if you don't take anything else away from what I say today, one of the most important things that you really need to learn how to do, and this is one of the things that's really been very helpful, especially here in the U.S., is learning how to read a food label. It's very simple, it's very clear. But what people do is they read it very quickly and they don't see the bottom line of what's on the label. For example, particularly things like candy, sweetened beverages, the amount that they give you, that they're giving you on the food label is not the amount that you're buying. And so very often folk will say, oh, this is not too bad, because what they very creatively do from a marketing perspective is they'll take a very small portion and then they'll give you the breakdown of that, and you think that you're not eating a lot of sugar or you're not getting a lot of calories. So be very careful about looking at what's the size of what you bought versus what you're actually eating. That's very important from the food label perspective. Okay, one thing I said I did want to talk a little bit about is acculturation. Acculturation is a fancy word that simply means that when we change the society in which we live, we want to fit, okay? Our lifestyles change. And so to what extent do you actually adopt the behaviors, including food behaviors, of the society that you live in? And so just like you get language acculturation, which our first speaker talked about, and several other kinds of things, you also get acculturation relative to food. And so what I did was I made a table, because I think these are important things for us to remember about the way we ate or the way we eat at home versus what we do here in the U.S. And so one of the things that happens for the most, if you look at the home country list of things, fresh fruit, most countries, subtropical or tropical, very easily available and easy to get. We don't eat as many when we get over here. In fact, we switched to a lot of sugar-coated types of things. Snacks and sweets, those were special occasion things. I remember when I was growing up, it had to be a special occasion before I got a candy bar of chocolate. My dad would buy it maybe once a week, and sometimes, because I didn't come from a very wealthy family, he took one candy bar and he cut it into 3 pieces, because there were 3 of us, and each of us had a tiny bit, and that was all we had, and we were very happy, okay? But how much do we eat now, compared, especially here in this society, compared to what we do at home? Big thing, we didn't eat as much fast food. It was very expensive, and so most times your parents packed you a lunch to go to school, or if you went out, you waited, you ate, you planned your outings based on maybe visiting someone where you were going to get a home-cooked meal versus necessarily always eating what I call, and we'll talk about fast food a little bit more. And then, wonderful. I said when I went through the line, I was so pleased to see, as I expected, beans, rice with vegetables, there were meat, there was a lot of meat there, but there was also a lot of vegetables, different selections, salad, and those are all important. The more color you have, the healthier the fruits and vegetables are. And then physical activity, like I said, most of us, even our young folk, as soon as they turn 16, they learn that in the U.S., it's time to get a driver's license, and it's time for us to drive everywhere, okay? And then we don't walk as much as we did. We don't do as many physical activity types of, you helped your parents. You worked sometimes in the field, you walked a lot of places, but we don't do that anymore. So those are big concerns relative to what we eat over here. And so just to put it in perspective, some of the things that we get faced with And the big thing is the fast food. So we've got our Pizza Hut and Domino's and KFC and donuts. Dunkin' Donuts even serves donuts that have eggs on them for breakfast nowadays, right? And they advertise it. And it's a big confusion. What do I eat? It's cheap. You can get $1, whatever it is, dollar menu. And so we feel that, and if you pay 30 cents more, you can get, and I'm exaggerating, you can get 4 pieces of meat and 6 pieces of cheese. Wow, I need to get all of that if I'm only going to pay 30 cents more. But that's not necessarily good for our bodies. So fast food is a big problem in our society. I thought I'd just give you guys a little bit of examples. McDonald's is the famous one that most of the time young folk cry for the appearance to take them to buy McDonald's rather than eating mom's food sometimes, even a lot of our international children. And if you look at, like I said, this is just a simple hamburger or cheeseburger, which is around 400, 500 calories, and we'll go through this and we'll see real quickly how this adds up. Okay, you take some French fries, and this is just the medium French fries, gives you about another 500 calories. And if you wanted the Big Mac instead, because it gave you more bread and more meat, because that's what we always want, more is better, right? Then you get more calories as well. And we have to have our soft drink or our sugar beverage, right? Versus, say, for example, a Diet Coke, and you put them all together. This is, I thought I would give Burger King a little bit of acknowledgement as well, since I use primarily McDonald's products. But this is just the original Whopper. It's 770 calories, one Whopper, okay? So you put them all together, okay, one meal, and it doesn't look like a lot of food, okay? And you get about 1,200 calories, which is more than half of the amount that you need for the day. It's no wonder that we have problems with individuals putting on more weight and having more problems with things like heart disease and diabetes and a lot of things that we didn't see as much when you think about our societies back home, okay? So I just wanted to talk about also the same time, because we always talk about obesity, some nutrition problems other than just obesity. One of the things that we're also starting to see, even in our populations of color, especially young children, is eating disorders. Went to school for the first year. The older brother said to the sister, "Oh my goodness, it looks like you gaining." You use a lot more colorful language, but I'll just make it a little bit better. You're gaining a lot of weight in a certain part of your body. And that poor little girl refused to eat for an entire week. The mom had to work with her. They brought her to us. We talked with her to convince her that it was okay for her to eat and it was not right for her little brother to be criticizing what she looked like at 6 years of age. Okay? So this is something that we don't talk about a lot of times, but I think especially in the young folk can be a problem, and so we have to be careful. We need to encourage good eating habits, but it's important for us to not necessarily make it seem like it's something that's sinful, especially if there is a food problem, because it can be a problem later on. Now, I did say that overweight and obesity is a big problem, and the things that we look at, sometimes we don't think about some of these things that might be related to people being overweight. So people developing type 2 diabetes, and the sad thing is that we are seeing so many young children. This is a disease that used to be primarily a problem in older folk, 40 years and older. And in our societies, people only got it when they were 60 and older. We're starting to see it in children as young as 6 years of age. Okay? So it's a serious problem. One thing that folk don't think about that's related to weight is fertility. Women having complications with pregnancy and childbirth, different types of cancer, and I think most of you are familiar with the fact that overweight or even poor diet is associated with problems with heart disease and high blood pressure. Okay? So I think that when we think about foods, what is our focus? And I try to put some key foods up here. We talk a lot about juice. That's not really juice. It's sweetened beverage that probably has about 0.5% juice. Okay, think about some of the things that we buy for our children to drink that supposedly are juice-like. Okay, and then the pop, you know, I'm sorry, we got lots of pop today. But that is a big problem because it's got a lot of sugar and most of them have a lot of calories just in that one can. You can take your cans and look at your label. If this is your first lesson in reading a label, and tell me how much your sugar and how much your calories is in your can. The other thing that we change is not drinking as much milk, which is very important as well. And then we also don't have enough of whole grains and fruits and vegetables, which, like I said, at home was something that was a very important part of our diets. One critical thing, and this is important, I think, as part of this gathering now, is the importance of family meals, where you sit at a table with your family and you share the meal. What happens in this society is whoever comes first gets what they want, and people just come and go. There's no conversation around the meal. There's no focus on the eating process, but more on let me just get as much as I can get, or I can just get whatever I can get, and not worry about the consequences. So that family meal, which we were taught about from the time that we were little, and even when you go back home now, you know that that's an important part of your culture, is a very, very important thing. One last thing that I do want to also mention is alternative therapies. When you think about the natural medicines that we use traditionally in Africa, most of them are in the form of leaves or actual plants, and here people focus a lot on pills. And anytime you synthesize anything that was natural in its potato or its onion or its leaf form into a pill, it is not natural. The other thing is that a lot of those things interact with some of the medications that you may be taking, and it's very important to get a very, very firm grip on whether or not that might be a problem. Okay? So this is what we look at as being a typical meal. Lots of soda, dessert, lots of meat, not enough vegetables, and this is really what we recommend, to try to make sure we have some milk and a variety. Most of your plate should be vegetables, not meat or starches, okay? So the bottom line, what's the bottom line? Because my husband always says you can't give all the facts, you need to give 2 or 3 points. And so the bottom line is that energy and nutrient balance is very, very important. We need activity. There's nothing that's good or bad. It is the amount that we have that's a problem. So the proportions and moderation of certain things that may not be as good for us is important. And then it's very important to have variety. And anytime you have an imbalance, you're going to get either a problem with overnutrition or undernutrition. We've got data that shows that even in Africa, actually in many other developing countries, including Brazil, we've got households where they have a child who might be overweight, but they're not overnourished. They still have nutrition deficiencies. They're getting more of the wrong kinds of things, but they still have problems. So overweight does not necessarily mean healthy. Okay, and so that's all I got for you today, and hope that if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
We are going to go ahead and open the floor for a few questions. Please, there seems to be a lot of side talking going on. I'm going to please plead with you that you please desist from talking to others. It's really disturbing the program. So please, let's avoid the side talking. Thank you.
Sorry, there were a couple questions. Yes, please.
What about the power bar?
What about that?
Power bar.
Well, again, remember what I said about reading the labels? It depends. If a child is engaged in, say, some kind of sporting activity, those can be useful, but not all of them are necessarily healthy ones, because you need to look at the ingredients, you need to see what it's providing. Some of them are very high in fat, some of them are high in sugar. So you want to make sure that, I can't overemphasize the importance of reading labels, okay? There's many different, America has everything big. So lots and lots and lots of choices of foods and food types. So this is why that label is so important.